Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. Welcome to the National Foundation for Ectodermal Dysplasias, EDI200 and Patient Registry conference call. All participants will be in an interactive mode. To ensure the best audio quality, please keep all background noise to a minimum and use your mute button when you are not speaking. After the start of the presentation, you may mute your line by pressing 6-3 on your telephone, and you may unmute your line by pressing 6-6. For operator assistance at any time during the conference, please press the star followed by the 0. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded, Tuesday, January 5th, 2010. I would now like to turn this conference over to Ms. Kelly Atchison, Director of Family Support and Outreach. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We will have several more participants joining us tonight for this call. We thank you for participating. This is a very exciting time for all of us, and so we're glad that you've joined us tonight. If you have submitted a question during registration and it is not answered during the presentations, please ask that question at the end of the presentation. We will have two speakers this evening, Dr. Neil Kirby, who currently is the CEO of Edimer Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Kirby has pharmaceutical executive with over 20 years of experience in leading biotechnology companies. Very excited to be working with him and having Edimer as a support of the foundation and the ectodermal dysplasia research. Mary Fete, NFED Director of Research and Treatment, will also be speaking. Mary will be speaking on the International Ectodermal Dysplasias Patient Registry tonight. So first, I will turn things over to Dr. Kirby.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. And
Happy New Year.
This is the start of a very exciting year, and what I'd like to do this evening is just remind everyone of what we're trying to achieve here at Edimer Pharmaceuticals. For those of you who were at the family conference back in July, you may have heard a little bit of this before, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page with what we're trying to achieve. And then I'd like to spend a few minutes, if I can, just telling you what happened since that July 23rd family conference and the busy 6 months that we've had, which is a precursor to a very busy several years ahead for us. And so it's a real pleasure to be speaking with you this evening. Obviously, our relationship with the National Foundation is a very important one for us, and our vision is very simple. We are dedicated to delivering a significant and durable improvement in the health, quality of life to future generations affected by XLHED. And our goal to do this will be through the development of a product that is now called EDI200. And maybe I can just briefly tell you a little bit about the molecule. I'm sure that many of you may have been tracking the progress of a product out of Switzerland called EDI200, which was being developed by a company called Apoxis. Well, EDI200 is the same molecule as EDI200. In fact, what happened was that Apoxis were acquired as a company, were acquired by a Danish company, and that Danish company decided not to proceed with development. And you may also recall that the development of this molecule was a little bit in abeyance. It sat for a while until Edimer Pharmaceuticals came along with the backing of Third Rock Ventures and VI Partners, two venture capital companies, who decided that this product and this indication was interesting enough and important enough to devote the focus of a whole company. And so Edimer Pharmaceuticals was born on July 1st of last year. And at that time, we have taken on the development of EDI200. The 200 itself, the molecule, is actually a very interesting product. It was developed out of a laboratory in Lausanne in Pascal Schneider's lab. Some of you may have met Pascal and his colleague Olivier Gates. And they really, about so years ago were leading the efforts in understanding the mechanism of action of EDI1 and its receptor EDAR. And from that research was developed this product. And it is a recombinant protein. It's not isolated from any human tissues. It is a recombinant protein that's made in Chinese hamster ovary cells, which is a typical manufacturing technique used for lots of recombinant proteins like beta interferon and many other pharmaceuticals that are currently on the market. So this is a very, very exciting product. You may recall the excitement of the data that was generated by Pascal Schneider in a mouse model of XLHED. And essentially the administration of this product at the right time pretty much caused a reversal in the phenotype and the way that these animals look. And so that in itself was extraordinarily exciting, and that information was bolstered by some work that was done in the United States, actually at UPenn by Maggie Casal, who has a dog colony, which also has XLHED. And this product was tested in the dogs, and in fact it showed exactly the same kind of reversion of phenotype that was seen in the mouse. So it's quite astonishing, actually, that a product this early in its development cycle has so much evidence of what we can call clinical activity in the mouse and in the dog. Now, that's great if you're a mouse or a dog, but obviously the most important thing for us now is to see if we can duplicate those results in man. And that is the true focus of Edimer Pharmaceuticals. And it was that vision that led to the financing of the company, as I mentioned, back in July of 2009. And so what I'd like to do, if I can, is just spend a few minutes telling you a little bit about what's happened in the last 6 months and what our vision is going forward over the next 2 to 3 years. The one thing that I mentioned at the patient meeting back in July was that the development of human pharmaceuticals is a long, drawn-out affair. And it takes many twists and turns along the way. And we're going to do our very best to keep the patients informed as to what's happening along the way. We're not going to tell you everything that happens because that would, frankly, it would just take too long. But we're going to try and keep you informed and tell you if there's any major deviations from our plan. And so the last 6 months have been extraordinarily busy. We spent a lot of time transitioning this product from Switzerland to the United States. And what I mean by that is we felt that the real expertise for clinical and pharmaceutical development lay in the United States rather than in Switzerland. And so for that reason, we moved all of the work that was being done in Switzerland is now being done in the United States, with the exception of the research by Pascal Schneider and Olivier Gay. That work continues in Lausanne and Geneva, and they are very close collaborators of Edimer right now. So there's a lot of continuity here with the work that was originally done in Switzerland by the inventors of this molecule, and that they are fully immersed in the Edimer plan and are a big part of that plan. So I think that's very important for all of you to understand, is that although we're moving all of the operations out of Switzerland, we're keeping some research effort, quite considerable research effort, in Lausanne and in Geneva with Olivier and Pascal. We also have signed an agreement with Maggie Casal, and she's going to continue her efforts with the dog colony to help us understand more and more about how EDI200 works and how we think we can make the transition into humans. So I mentioned our vision. I want to mention it again because I think it's important that you understand that our vision is really focused, at least in the initial phases, on future generations. We think that the children who are born with the disorder offer us the best possible opportunity to influence the disease. And so we're focused on babies and neonates that are born with the disorder, and that we hope to be able to have a similar effect in these kids as we showed in the mouse and in the dog. Now that doesn't mean to say that we're going to stop there. We really, that's our initial focus is on the children, but we want to spend more time actually trying to understand more about the disease in later life, and actually not just in males but in females. We recognize, as I met several mothers when I was at the family conference, that the notion that these mothers are unaffected is just not true. And we recognize the disease is as active in some cases in the female carriers as in the children. And so we want to spend some time trying to understand if there's something we can do later in life for carriers and for existing patients. But the real focus, and I want to emphasize this, the real focus is on the future generation. I also mentioned to you all before at the family conference that our timeline and our overall plan really focused on getting this drug into the clinic, into our first human patient in the second half of 2011. And nothing has changed since July. We're still on track for that. There's nothing that has changed in that timing. So that's our current plan. As I mentioned, we've made some really important steps in building the company and building our in-house expertise. We decided that the company itself, Edimer, would be what we call a virtual company. What that really means is that we're going to have very few full-time people working specifically for Edimer Pharmaceuticals. And we would supplement those people by experts and consultants who have tremendous experience in developing drugs for rare genetic disorders, orphan indication, manufacturing, preclinical work, all of the aspects, regulatory affairs, working with the FDA and the EMEA in Europe, real experts in helping us do the right things to develop this drug right. Because we want to do this right the first time. We don't have the time, or quite frankly, we don't have the cash to be able to make this go on for too long. We want to do this right the first time and do it as expeditiously and as safely as we can. So what I'd like to tell you a little bit about is some of the people that we've hired. I didn't introduce myself completely, and I did a full introduction at the family conference, and I can tell you a little bit about myself and then tell you about the other important people that we've hired just recently into the company. So I have about, well, it's actually over 20 years of experience now in the development of pharmaceutical products, specifically biological pharmaceutical products. I've worked for a number of fairly large companies, Biogen, IDEC, Wyeth Pharmaceuticals, and actually pretty much all of my time in the industry has been dedicated to orphan drugs and to orphan indication. I worked a lot in the hemophilia arena and was responsible for development of two new recombinant coagulation factors for hemophilia A and hemophilia B. I worked in the HIV field in the early days when that was considered an orphan drug. It's not anymore. I also worked in the field of multiple sclerosis with beta interferon development. Again, there's another drug that was another indication that was originally an orphan, which is no longer an orphan. And then I spent several years at a company called Transkaryotic Therapies, which really was a company focused on the development of products for rare genetic disorders for Fabry disease, Gaucher disease, Hunter syndrome. And I worked with the regulatory agencies around the world, as well as with our in-house development folks, to make sure that those developed. More recently, I was working for a number of companies as a consultant, and when Third Rock Ventures decided that they wanted to be involved in rare genetic disorders, which actually was a very big step for a venture company, I went and helped them, advised them, and at that time started working with Phil Riley, who is now part of our advisory board. And for those of you who don't know Phil, he is one of the world's leading experts in genetic disorders, and more importantly to us, I think now, is one of the great geneticists in the U.S., one of the great ethicists, I beg your pardon. And so he is a great advisor to the company. I want to talk a little bit about the people we've just hired. Jeff Behrens joined the company just over 6 to 8 weeks ago. He is our Senior Director of Business Development and Operations, and he's been working a great deal with Mary at NFED on some survey tools that we've been working on to understand more about the disorder, and making sure that we got our new facility up and running, and Jeff's going to be working a great deal going forward on some of the pharmacoeconomic aspects of this project, as well as manufacturing, and actually he'll be involved with lots of different bits and pieces. And there's a strong member of our team. Jeff has worked at a number of biotech companies, and he's a very strong addition to our team. So that was a great addition. More recently, as in just yesterday, we had Ken Hutner join the company as a full-time employee, and Ken is our Senior Director of Clinical Research. And we're delighted to have Ken join us. Ken is a pediatrician specialist in neonatology. He's an MD and also has a PhD in genetics from Yale. And so his real passion is in both treating children as well as understanding the genetics of disorders. And I'm very happy that he decided to join us, and we're looking forward to integrating him into the company. And I'm sure you'll get to meet him at family conferences coming up in the future. We just hired an office manager who hopefully is going to make all of our lives within the company a lot easier, and making sure that we attend meetings on time and get to family meetings appropriately when we need to. So Tessa Lorenzi is going to be joining us, actually, I think on the 19th of January as our office manager. So we only have one more open position to fill, and that's someone who is going to be responsible for project management and with some experience either in regulatory affairs or in manufacturing aspects, and they're going to be making sure that all the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed, and make sure that we keep on track. So that's an important role, and we hope to fill that position in the next 6 to 8 weeks. That really fills in the entire team, and we believe that this group of dedicated people at Edimer, together with our advisors, who number in the 10 to 15 range at this point, really the experts who are going to drive this program and make sure that we're successful. So we've been extremely fortunate to hire very good people and bring in people who are going to make a difference in the development of EDI200. So I mentioned that we have key advisors, so we've got people who are advising us from all aspects of this project, from manufacturing to preclinical toxicology expertise to clinical expertise. And again, we're very fortunate we have an extremely strong group who really believe that this product is going to make a big difference in the lives of patients. And that's an important part of anyone joining Edimer, is to share that passion and that vision. I mentioned that Jeff made sure that we got into our new space, our new facility, our global headquarters. We were actually squatting in the Third Rock offices for 6 months, and it was time for us to move on, and we got some nice office space in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we're very happy to be in our own space with our own name on the door, and it makes us feel like a real company. We've made some tremendous progress on the manufacturing aspects and analytical piece of this project. Again, just to remind you, this project has lay dormant for several months, tens of months actually, in Switzerland. And the first thing we wanted to do was to make sure that we could take the cell line that produces the product and see if we could make the product in our hands in the United States. And we were able to do that late last year, and that was a significant achievement. We actually made our first small batch of material that we'll be using in some additional animal studies, and our plan now is that we will be signing a contract with a large-scale clinical-grade manufacturing organization, and we will be generating that material over the next several months. So that's a big step forward. I mentioned our advisors, of which we have many. We also held our first advisory board, and this is a group of people who are dealing with both strategic as well as tactical issues as we move this product from the animal studies and into the human situation, and make sure that we do everything right. So we had a very good first meeting, and everyone's very excited to be involved. We've actually started some additional animal studies with Pascal Schneider and with one of our contract organizations in Michigan, and those studies are all progressing nicely. I think that the thing that I've enjoyed most in the last 6 months is meeting with the families and patients, both at the family meeting on July 23rd and 24th in Virginia. That was a really special time to be around the families as we announced that we were taking this program forward. And also, I was at the bash in New York, at the Halloween bash, and enjoyed that immensely. Although the New York crowd can be a bit tough, but we'll get used to that, I suppose. I've also spent a fair amount of time talking with people around the world, family organizations around the world, and I've spoken by video conference to the Australians. I met in person with the French group, and also with the UK organization, and with the group that represents Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And through those conversations, I learned a lot more about the disease itself and how the foundations work around the world, and that's been extraordinarily helpful, and we hope to continue that in the coming months. It has been a very busy 6 months. It's been extraordinarily gratifying. We've still got a huge amount of work ahead of us to make sure that this is successful, and I just want to remind people here that, as I mentioned before, pharmaceutical development is difficult. We're very fortunate in that we have 2 animal models, the dog and the mouse, where we've shown that the drug has activity and it seems to work. But, very often it doesn't represent what happens in the human situation. So I want to caution everyone that we're going to do our very best, and we're going to be driven by data, which is the best way to be. And we hope and we think the data from the animals will be predictive, but we just never know until we do the study. And so I just want to leave that thought with you. I also want to mention in wrapping up that one of the things we did get going, or one of the things that Jeff got going actually, is the website. So if you want to visit edimerpharma.com, you'll see a little bit more about the company, and you'll see our new logo and tell you about some of the people who are involved. Again, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I know there's going to be lots of questions which I haven't been able to address in this brief presentation that I've given you, but I'll happily answer any questions you have, and look forward to seeing you, some of you, at the next family conference.
If there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Are there timelines that you could share with us on the transition for your testing?
Your question is about the timeline for when we think. So the timeline is that we'll be manufacturing material that will be ready to go into the clinic later this year, and we hope to start our first clinical study in patients in the second half of 2011.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Stop.
Hi, this is Denise Farley from West Des Moines, Iowa. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. What was the year that you said you're going to start using the drug in humans?
Second half of 2011.
Okay. I have a 18-year-old male son, and when I registered, I guess I should have gave his name. His name is David. But what kinds of characteristics will this drug help with? Because my son and I have got a bucket load of different traits, and I did fill out the survey the other day.
Well, as I mentioned, the first focus is actually going to be treating newborns.
Right, but I understand that. But, like, for example, my son, who's 18, he's got numerous characteristics, and so when you give the drug to the newborn, what hopes will the drug prevent the child from having as they grow older?
So the best answer I can give you to that, obviously, is, we'll know when we do the study, but that's not a very good answer. The better answer is that the data from the dogs and the mice indicate that there are several aspects of the disease that may be amenable to this therapy. So in the mouse, for example, they have improved hair growth and sweat gland presentation. In the dog, it's actually similar kinds of information, but there's also data in the dog that suggests that the glands in the mucosa, the bronchus, which I know causes many problems in patients, seem to be an area that is helped by this particular product. The dentition is something else that appears to be impacted. So sweat gland development, the data from the animals suggests that sweat gland development, the mucociliary mechanisms, as well as the hair formation, as well as sweat gland formation, seem to be areas that are impacted. I know that there's many more aspects to the disease than that, but until we understand more about what this drug does in humans, I'm not going to be really able to answer the question.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is John. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. I already have a question.
Okay. My name's Laura Locke. I live in Ashaway, Rhode Island, and I have an 8-month-old named Caleb. And my question is, when you say newborn, are you talking like newborn 0 to 2 months, 0 to 3 months?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Laura. We still need to do some work on identifying what is the best possible time to administer the drug.
Okay.
And again, which is all we've got to go on right now, is the animal data seems to indicate the earlier the better. But again, we're going to be doing some additional work to make sure that we understand that window of opportunity, if you like. So we think it's going to be within the first weeks of life.
Okay.
We need to understand more about that.
Sorry, this is John Runza again from Lakefield, Ontario, Canada. I'm just wondering, is there any steps going to pre-birth, so embryonic or fetal injection in the mother? I myself have ectodermal dysplasia, and I've got a daughter who's a carrier, obviously. So I'm wondering, is there any potential for the manufacturer of the drug to be able to be provided pre or in utero?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, and in fact, I mentioned before that this molecule was engineered, and this molecule was engineered to actually allow it to cross the placental barrier.
Right.
And so, for example, in the mouse, a lot of data has been generated by giving the mouse the drug in exactly the way you described to the mother, and by transfer it gets to the fetus. And it seems to be active in that, following that. I think that, again, from a regulatory perspective, we're very interested in therapy in maybe the third trimester, but I think that we need to start with neonates and maybe work backwards. But it is an opportunity. But again, that's one of the things that we were looking at in the future.
Thank you. Fair enough.
Thank you for the wonderful questions. I'm going to ask you to hold your questions on the EDI200 treatment, and we're going to let Mary Fete present on the International Ectodermal Dysplasias Patient Registry. And then once Mary has completed her presentation, we will have time for additional questions. Mary?
Well, good evening and Happy New Year to everybody, and thank you for participating in this call. I'm going to try to not to talk too long, but I want to give you as much information about the patient registry that I can to let you know about the importance of participating in the patient registry, and definitely to reassure you about data confidentiality and patient confidentiality. We're very excited to launch the International Ectodermal Dysplasia Patient Registry on March 1st of 2010. Keep in mind that some of the information that I give you tonight could change over the course of the next couple of weeks because it's still a work in progress. There's some things, however, that won't change. That will be the data security and the patient confidentiality. I need to mention that Edimer is the lead funder of this registry, and we're very grateful for their support and commitment. But you also need to know that NFED is also contributing significant funds and resources to this project. And we are continuing to look for funding for the patient registry, so if you have any ideas, I'm all ears. So this patient registry is an international registry, and it's for all individuals affected by any ectodermal dysplasias from any country in the world. So you might ask, well, what exactly is a patient registry? Patient registries are collections of data related to patients with a specific syndrome, diagnosis, condition, or procedure. This patient registry will be a central online database that identifies and registers patients with any form of ectodermal dysplasias, collects and stores this information, and makes this information available to investigators interested in studying the disorders. The purpose of the International Ectodermal Dysplasia Patient Registry is to collect basic information on individuals affected by ectodermal dysplasias. This information will be used to further characterize and classify ectodermal dysplasias, to facilitate and expedite clinical trials, and to get us all closer to treatments for ectodermal dysplasias. Basically, this is a way for individuals to get their name and contact information to researchers who will be conducting clinical research trials. Recruitment for clinical trials is often takes a very long time, especially for rare disorders like ectodermal dysplasias. So patient registries allow individuals, clinicians, and researchers to identify health trends, recognize the most effective treatments, and design clinical trials for potential therapies. So the primary objective of the patient registry are to characterize and describe the ectodermal dysplasia population. The more we learn about the syndromes, the better understanding we will have, and the more likely we will be in successfully finding solutions to the challenges associated with ectodermal dysplasia. Many of the questions in the registry are concerns that actually you and our families have shared with us. You know, we may hear something once, then we think about it. We may get the question a second time, and we think a little harder about it. And then we get the question the third time, I go, I wonder if this is related to ectodermal dysplasias. And the patient registry will help us sort these challenges out, see maybe what is related and what is not related. The registry will assist with the development of recommendations for standards of care, which is very important, as we all know the problems associated with treatment for the syndrome. The registry will also facilitate in the planning of clinical trials. By clearly identifying the problems, we open the door to new clinical trials. And clinical trials are a crucial and critical part of finding treatments and a cure for all ectodermal dysplasias. We'll also accelerate and facilitate clinical trials for research participants quickly and efficiently. By identifying individuals with various ectodermal dysplasias, we will be ready, and we need to be ready when new clinical breakthroughs are available. This is particularly important in light of what Dr. Kirby just shared with us. We need to be able to identify individuals quickly and efficiently. And I'll give you an example. The Duchenne muscular dystrophy patient registry has been up and running for about a year and a half. And this particular muscular dystrophy, the Duchenne syndrome, is very, very rare. And they were quickly able to identify 20 patients for a new clinical trial for a potential treatment. So you can see the tremendous value about having this information at your hand. Now, the patient registry will be web-based. The company that will provide the software is Inalus. And Inalus is a company that has worked with many disorders, rare diseases, to help set up the patient registry and to house the patient registry. They have a long history of successful patient registries, and actually Inalus is the company that worked with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So I want to address probably your biggest concern right up front. One of the biggest concerns you probably have is confidentiality and patient privacy. I share those concerns with you, and it is our obligation to ensure the privacy of all who participate in the patient registry. The United States, as you probably know, has extremely stringent laws in place to protect the privacy of identifiable health information for all information. Health information in the United States is protected by federal law. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services instituted the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in 1996, known as the HIPAA Privacy Rule. This outlines how healthcare information must be protected. The Office for Civil Rights enforces the HIPAA Privacy Rule, and this law protects the privacy of all individuals in identical health information. The software program we will be using for the patient registry is HIPAA compliant. Information will be de-identified in their system. As I discussed, the registry will be web-based, and actually there's two applications to this web-based program. The first application is called Patient Crossroads, and it's this application that will allow individuals affected to participate in the registry, to register and enter their data. The second application is the research part. It's called Research Crossroads, and that will enable disease research organizations and investigators to collaborate and discover information by sharing findings with other researchers with similar interests. Hopefully, people that collaborate together by sharing information, we will have better outcomes, better research stimulated. So how exactly is your information protected? I'm going to give you this information, but I'm going to tell you right up front I'm not really a computer guru, and I don't really understand all about data encryptation and that information. You probably will understand it better than I do, but I've done a lot of research and checked a lot of sources, and I can tell you that the system that we're using is very secure. So some of the safeguards are, there's physical safeguards. The software is located in a facility that provides 24-hour physical security, redundant electrical generators, redundant data center air conditioners, and other backup equipment designed to keep the servers secure and continually up and running. They also have organizational safeguards. The Inalus employees do not have any access to the data. This data is housed in a secure building with servers that manage the patient data. They're housed in a secure environment that is accessed only by a team of approved professional engineers and security specialists, and they don't even have the information. The network perimeter is protected by multiple firewalls. and monitored by intrusion detective systems, all sourced by industry-leading security vendors. In addition, firewall logs are monitored and analyzed to proactively identify security threats. There's also mechanisms in place to lock the data and protect the data while you're entering your data, so people can't access your data, or one user can't see another user's information. You have to, when you initially log in, you have to have a valid username and password that is secure and applies only to you. So you can see that this is very secure. The data is very secure. And I guess the second and probably the biggest question is, who's going to have access to this data? I will have access to the data as the Director of Research for the National Foundation for Ectodermal Dysplasias. I'm a registered nurse with a master's degree in public health, and I'm not only mandated by my ethical standards, but I'm mandated by my licensure to maintain and uphold HIPAA regulations. Kelly is going to help me with the patient registry, and she will also have access to the data. And Kelly works daily with our families, and you know how she treats your information. We will have to have access to data to manage the data and make sure the data is entered correctly. I will also be reviewing the data regularly to identify trends, problems, consistency, and inconsistencies. We may need to call you for additional information. Your information will not be given out to anyone without your implicit and informed consent. We also need your identifying data so that we can contact you with questions, but also to let you know about any clinical trials, potential treatments that might become available, so that you are notified of anything that might be in your best interest. Now, for researchers to access the data, they'll have to complete a data profile sheet, and we'll have to verify their information and give them a password and username, and they'll only be able to access unidentified anonymous data so that they can see trends that may be of interest to their research. For a researcher doing clinical trials who needs to have access to patients, they will have to have institutional review approval from their institution and have a valid and credible research project. They'll have to submit that to a review board for approval, and then we will contact you. Once we confirm and the value and the validity of the research project, we will contact eligible participants, inform you, and give you the information about this research so you can make an informed consent, speak to the researcher, and make your decision. So what are the goals and the visions of the registry? Well, they're very simple. The goal of the patient registry is to facilitate communication between affected individuals, clinicians involved in their treatment, and scientists who strive to advance research related to ectodermal dysplasias. Having all this information in one central place will facilitate communication and discovery. The vision is to establish an international registry that will ultimately serve as a repository of people affected by ectodermal dysplasias, both the common and the rarer disorders, to achieve our goals. So who should participate? Everybody affected by an ectodermal dysplasia needs to participate. The more data we have, the better we can collectively identify problems and work on the solutions. Everyone in your family who is affected needs to complete a patient profile. Parents need to complete a profile for each of their child, and I would encourage you to encourage all your family members who are affected to complete a patient file. All international groups are invited to participate. We have to have global collaboration. We just have to have global collaboration to further the research goals of the entire ectodermal dysplasia community. We have already had the commitment of the international groups to participate in the patient registry. The registry will be launched on March 1st. It's going to be launched in English first. There's a couple reasons for that. Is every language that we add, there's an added expense. But we first want to work out the bugs. We first want to have it just the way we want it before we ask our peers, our international peers, to translate the registry for their constituents. Other languages will be added over the next couple months following the launch. languages will be probably the first ones will probably be German, French, Italian, Spanish, Danish, but we will add languages to accommodate the global population. You might be curious in how we develop the patient registry, what's the format. We've been working really hard to develop the questionnaires, and we have members of our scientific advisory councils, the international groups and their medical advisors, NFED staff, family members, to develop this initial draft. The draft should be ready for a final review later this week or the first part of next week, so it'll go through a final review by our medical advisors and staff and international groups. The format is actually very simple. First, when you log on online, you will need to complete a detailed informed consent so that you're aware of what the goals are and the intent of the registry and how the information is going to be used. You have to give consent before you participate. There's probably about 65 questions in the survey, and they're broken into various sections related to oral health, hair, skin, respiratory, various systems. It's easy to complete. Most of the questions are drop-down boxes, so you can kind of pick your answer. The questions include personal information such as your name, age, sex, contact information, so that we can contact you if there's information that you need to know or if we need clarification. And then clinical information, as I discussed, related to various body systems. And again, anything we discuss, it could, as we fine-tune over the next couple of weeks, things could change. Our success is really vital at this time. With the hope of EDI200 therapy on the horizon, we really need to get this up and running. We need to be able to successfully identify potential candidates. If successful, this treatment must be available to anyone affected by XLHED who is eligible for this treatment. That's why we have to be fast. We have to get this up and running and encourage participation, because we'll need to identify these candidates very quickly. And EDI200 therapy is hopefully just the first potential treatment for ectodermal dysplasias. So keep in mind that things could change over the next couple of weeks. I'm attending a patient registry conference in Washington, D.C., sponsored by NIH and the Office of Rare Disease. This weekend, I might learn some very valuable information that might change parts of our process. We want to make absolutely sure that the patient registry serves the ectodermal dysplasia population, is compliant with all regulation, and that, in fact, it does advance research efforts for ectodermal dysplasias. Please know we're working for you, and we will make absolutely sure that everything we do related to this project is done right and is done in your best interest. The patient registry creates an enormous opportunity to advance basic clinical translational studies in ectodermal dysplasias. It also provides an essential resource for all investigators interested in studying ectodermal dysplasias and stimulates opportunities for additional research support through federal and private sources. I thank you for being on the call. I thank you for your commitment and support. We need your help. We have lots of work to do. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mary? I am Richard Hinkle from Fete in Oregon. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Is the expectation and the hope that the registry will be at a point that by the second half of 2011 it will be the resource for possible participants in the clinical trials?
Absolutely.
And we will be notified by email, or how, when we can go ahead and participate in the registry?
That's why it's so important, once you complete your patient profile or your profile, that you update that. So if you move or you have to change contact information, we have to be able to get a hold of you. So we will email, we will call, we will get a hold of you if we have the information.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any concerns about confidentiality or data protection or?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay, this is Janice from Oklahoma. I have a question. When we fill out the patient registry, do you ask specifically, like what form of ED that
Yes, we do.
patient? Okay. On my daughter, she was diagnosed with one form of ED, but after going to the conferences and meeting with you people, y'all think she has a different kind. But the problem is her geneticist won't change her diagnosis. We went to another geneticist, and he doesn't see any need to test her because of how expensive it is. My question is, when y'all get this up and running and I get this filled out for Jill and everything, am I going to put what I think she has, or do y'all want to know for sure?
Well,
what
I think
she has?
you'll have an opportunity to check the drop-down box for the diagnosis, and then you'll have an opportunity. Did you have genetic testing done?
Well, yeah, and okay. So they thought she had Rap Hodgkin's, and they did genetic testing on it, came back negative. But her geneticist said, oh, don't worry, sometimes it just comes back negative. That's what we think she has. But everybody in NFED thinks she has HED. So, and I can't get a geneticist to retest her because of how expensive it is. So
they didn't test for HED. They only tested for Rap Hodgkin's. And it came out negative for Rap Hodgkin's.
Right.
Well, that's a tough call. I guess, you really don't have a confirmed diagnosis. Yeah, I think if you fill it out and you answer the questions based on the clinical manifestations and put that, check the Rap Hodgkin's and maybe even check the other one and then put the genetic testing in there, and then there should be a place that you can explain. And then hopefully with the clinical picture, we'll have a clear idea, and it probably, may come, there may be a recommendation for you to clarify with a genetic test based on the symptoms.
My other question is, on circumstances like this, because I'm sure there's other people out there that don't have a solid diagnosis, would there be any opportunity with anybody being helped paying for this?
Well, we're working on some avenues, but I can't make any I can't make any promises. But we're working to see if we can negotiate some things, but it's not in effect right now. And you're right. Probably more than half of the individuals on our database don't have a diagnosis. And that's, I think, another reason the registry will be so valuable is because when you have all the clinical symptoms in one spot and you can see the clinical picture. Most often, a diagnosis, a very good diagnosis, can be made by the clinical system, by the clinical manifestations. But then, to really participate in clinical trials, it had to be a genetic verification, testing to verify the syndrome.
Well, thank you, everyone. We are supposed to end the call at 8 o'clock. If you have additional questions, please submit them to our office so that we can get them answered. You can email them at info@nfed.org. You can find the same email address off of our website, nfed.org, or you can call our office at 618-566-2020. I hope you all have been enlightened tonight with this information. I know I have, and I've heard it on multiple occasions. So we do thank you for participating. And again, please do not hesitate to contact us with those questions. We want to get them answered.
And we encourage your questions.
Well, thank you very much. It was very informative.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the conference for this evening. We thank you for your participation and ask that you please disconnect your lines.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.